This month, I wrote an essay titled The Quiet War Between Closeness and Self-Protection. It explores the tensions many of us live with, wanting closeness and yet protecting ourselves from it. I'm going to read the essay in full. The Quiet War Between Closeness and Self-Protection. Most of us want closeness. We want to feel known, understood, and at ease with the people who matter to us. At the same time, many of us are quietly protecting ourselves from the very intimacy we say we want. We do this not because we are broken or afraid of connection, but because closeness raises the stakes. When something matters, the risk of disappointment, misunderstanding, or loss becomes more real. And so, often without realizing it, we begin to guard. We pull back, we tense up, manage, or defend, even as we reach for connection. This is the quiet war many of us live inside, the longing for closeness alongside the instinct to protect ourselves from it. This tension shows up in small, familiar ways. A hesitation before speaking honestly, a tightening in the body when someone asks for more than we feel ready to give, the urge to explain, justify, withdraw, or stay busy instead of staying present. We may tell ourselves we are being reasonable, independent, or self-contained, but often these moves are forms of protection. There are ways of managing closeness rather than meeting it directly. Because they happen quietly, they can persist for years without being questioned, shaping how we show up with partners, children, friends, clients, and even ourselves. To understand why this tension exists, it helps to slow down and consider what closeness actually asks of us. Genuine intimacy does not simply offer comfort, it exposes, it reveals our needs, our hopes, and our unfinished business. It brings us into contact with the parts of ourselves that learned long ago how to stay safe by staying small, controlled, or self-sufficient. When we move towards closeness, those parts do not disappear, they become alert. For many of us, protection developed early and for good reason. We learned, often without words, that closeness could be unpredictable, that expressing need might lead to disappointment, that relying on someone could invite pain. Over time, strategies formed. Some of us learned to manage ourselves tightly. Others learned to manage the room. Some became agreeable. Others became distant. These adaptations were not mistakes. They were intelligent responses to the environments we found ourselves in. They helped us survive, belong, and function. The difficulty arises when these same strategies continue long after the original conditions have changed. What once protected us quietly begins to interfere. We may brace in moments that no longer require armor. We may keep people at a distance without fully realizing why. We may feel frustrated that relationships feel harder than they should, without recognizing that an old vigilance is still operating beneath the surface. This is why people often bring their worst selves to the people they love the most. Not because love makes us careless, but because love makes us exposed. The higher the emotional stakes, the more quickly protective patterns activate. A casual acquaintance does not engage the nervous system in the same way as a partner, a child, or a close friend. With those who matter the most, the cost of misunderstanding or loss feels higher, and so our defenses come online faster and more forcefully. In these moments, self-protection can take many forms. It can look like control, an attempt to shape outcomes so uncertainty feels more manageable. It may look like withdrawal, reducing contact to reduce risk. It may look like reasonableness, staying calm and composed while quietly disconnecting from one's own feelings. It can even look like productivity, staying busy enough that deeper contact never quite happens. None of these are moral failures, they are protective responses. What makes this war so quiet is that these responses are often reinforced. Independence is praised, emotional restraint is rewarded. Being low maintenance is treated as maturity. We may receive affirmation for exactly the behaviors that keep us from being fully met. Over time, protection can be mistaken for strength and distance for peace. This confusion shows up across many kinds of relationships. In families, it may appear as staying pleasant while avoiding difficult conversations. In friendship, it may look like connection that never quite deepens. In professional settings, it can show up as competence without vulnerability, clarity without warmth. Even in spiritual or personal growth spaces, self-protection can hide behind language about acceptance or detachment, while real emotional contact remains just out of reach. One of the more painful aspects of this dynamic is how easily it turns inward. We notice ourselves pulling back or reacting defensively and conclude that something is wrong with us. We wonder why closeness feels harder than what it seems like for others. Without a compassionate frame, we add self-judgment to an already protective system. Ironically, this judgment often strengthens the very patterns we wish to loosen. A more useful question is not, why am I like this, but what am I trying to protect? When we ask the second question, the tone changes. Curiosity replaces condemnation. We begin to see that protection arises where something meaningful is at stake. It signals care and attachment, not deficiency. And this shift matters. When protection is treated as an enemy, we tend to fight it. We push ourselves to be braver, more open, more trusting, often without attending to what feels threatened. This approach may produce short-lived change, but it rarely lasts. Eventually, the nervous system reasserts itself, sometimes with even greater intensity. When protection is understood as information, something different becomes possible. We can notice the impulse to withdraw or control without immediately acting on it. We can pause just long enough to recognize what is happening. Not to override the response, but to understand it. Awareness does not eliminate fear, but it changes our relationship to it. Over time, this noticing creates subtle shifts. We may stay present for a few seconds longer in a difficult conversation. We may speak a truth gently rather than swallow it completely. We may recognize when we are managing closeness instead of meeting it and allowing ourselves to soften, even briefly. These are not dramatic breakthroughs. They are quiet reorientations. The work is not about dismantling all boundaries or forcing vulnerability. Discernment matters. Not every relationship is capable or is safe to hold deep intimacy. The issue is not protection itself, but rigidity. When protection becomes automatic and unquestioned, it limits our capacity for genuine connection. When it becomes conscious, it can exist alongside openness. This distinction is subtle but essential. Conscious protection allows choice. Automatic protection removes it. The aim is not to live unguarded, but to live aware. Awareness restores agency. It gives us room to decide how we want to show up, rather than reacting from old reflexes. As awareness grows, We may begin to notice how often peace is confused with distance. Avoiding conflict can feel calm on the surface, but unresolved tension does not disappear. It settles. It emerges later as resentment, numbness, or quiet loneliness. True peace has more texture. It includes discomfort, honesty, and repair. It requires presence, not avoidance. This is where the war between closeness and self-protection begins to loosen its grip, not because it has been resolved, but because it has been named. What was once an unconscious battle becomes a conscious tension we can hold. In that holding, the urgency to defend softens. The need to manage diminishes. We begin to trust ourselves to stay present even when things feel uncertain. Perhaps the work is not to eliminate this tension, but to notice it more gently as it arises, to recognize the moment when protection takes over and closeness quietly recedes, not as a failure, but as information, a sign that something meaningful is at stake. When we can hold that moment with a little more awareness and a little less urgency to defend, something begins to shift. We may not become braver overnight, but we become more present. And in that presence, the war between closeness and self-protection slowly loses its hold. And not because it has been conquered, but because it has been understood. If this reflection resonates with you, the full essay is linked below. Thank you for taking the time to sit with it.